Hey, this your man Tony Wiggins here with Locked On Jaguars. A sense of normalcy, competence, and confidence has gotten to the city with the arrival of Doug Peterson as the new head coach. I'll talk about all of that today here on Locked On Jaguars.
You are Locked On Jags, your daily Jacksonville Jaguars podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Thank you for joining us here on Locked On Jaguars. Every day I'm your host, Tony Wiggins. Been covering the Jaguars now for over 10 years, whether it be on television, terrestrial radio, or here on the Locked On Jaguars podcast. I'd like to thank you all for joining us and making us your first listen here every single day, because it's your team every day, and we definitely aim to please. Today's show is sponsored by Get Upside. Just download the free Get Upside app and use the promo code Touchdown to get 25 cents per gallon or more cash back on your first tank. Finally happened, man. The Jaguars got a coach, named a coach, had a press conference. Doug Pederson was introduced this past Saturday as the head coach of the Jacksonville Jaguars. I believe head coach number 7 of the Jacksonville Jaguars. And he's the only one who, at the time he was named head coach, had a Super Bowl ring and a Lombardi trophy already in his case. So what does it mean? We're going to go through a number of things and what it means. So in segment 3, I'll talk to you about how it might change with the draft and the structure of the organization that Shah Khan mentioned about the fact that they have applied to get an executive vice president, and they're going to beef up the staff around Trent Baalke. I talked to you guys about that. I have been saying that for a year, that this is what they needed to do. And it seems like Little Bird must have whispered to Shah, because he's doing that. He's actually beefing it up, and he's getting the type of staff that the Jaguars will need to move on. And we'll talk about that and how it affects the draft. Segment 2, I want to talk about how it affects free agency. But right now, and that's a big deal too, but right now, I want to talk about how it affects this team. And by this team, I mean the whole team, the whole city, and in particularly quarterback Trevor Lawrence. Trevor Lawrence was all smiles the other day, man, and he should be. He absolutely should be all smiles the other day. Doug Pederson played quarterback in the National Football League, coached quarterbacks in the National Football League, coached under Andy Reid in the NFL, did a lot of stuff, went to the playoffs a lot. Then he coached the Philadelphia Eagles and had Frank Reich on his staff, and they lost Carson Wentz, who was on his way to MVP, and as you all know, played the New England Patriots in the Super Bowl with Nick Foles, and Nick Foles was on fire. And they stared down the gun barrel and beat Bill Belichick and Tom Brady. Let me tell you why Doug Pederson's confidence, to me, is going to resonate through this organization. I'm going to tell you 3 things it's going to give this organization. It's going to give them competence, confidence, and just a sense of normalcy when it comes to football. It's a very low bar when people were saying we just need an adult at the head coaching spot. That's a very, very low bar. And in the grand scheme of things, it's too low. And because Urban Meyer didn't act like an adult. They need a coach that acts like a coach, knows how to be a coach in the NFL, understands what it's like to be an NFL. He's not going to complain about the same rules in the NFL that everyone else has to go by. But they also need someone who at least knows all of his players' names. See, these are all low bar things. This is the way our thinking was, and this is why this feels so good to me as an individual. Doug is in charge. He's in charge. I want to read you something. Now, after he won the Super Bowl in 2018, so pardon me for looking down, but I'm going to read this because I have to look down. This is him after he won the Super Bowl and after his book came out. I'm going to tell you something that he said. He chronicled in the book about, and we recall this because Doug Marrone came out when somebody asked about it. Doug Marrone said he read a book called The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Blank, And that was his answer to Doug Peterson. And we all laughed about it because Dougie, he was our coach at the time, right? That's the side of the aisle that we were on. But we were also all angry at the fact that Doug Marrone, with 50 some odd seconds left, going against New England, decided to take a knee with 2 timeouts. We were all angry at that at the time, and that's what Doug Peterson said something about it, and then Marrone responded the way he responded. Of course, we were all on Marrone's side because that's our dude, right? And anybody who talks against our coach is the ops. But privately, we all said to ourselves, why did they take a knee? Why did they take a knee? So fortunately, in the AFC Championship game in New England for Jacksonville, what happened is we all had this out. And the out was that Miles Jack wasn't down. And people really stopped talking about the fact that Doug did what he did. People forgave Doug for doing what he did because they said, well, maybe him and Hackett knew that Bortles couldn't get it done. That's probably true too. But here's the point. If you get there, you got to try. If you get there, you got to try. Peterson wrote in his book, Fearless, and I'm quoting this, that he was astounded that the Jaguars took a knee with 55 seconds left remaining in the first half of the AFC title game. The Jaguars had a 14-10 lead and 2 timeouts remaining. According to ESPN stats information, it was the first time in the 2017 season that a team had taken a knee with more than 50 seconds remaining in the half. The Jaguars should have been aggressive, Peterson wrote. Listen, I was there thinking, you got to be kidding me now. It made me mad because Jacksonville had New England right where they wanted them. I was screaming at the TV in my office when they knelt right before halftime. Inside, I was like, I'll never do that. It fueled me. They could have at least tried for a field goal. They took it out of their quarterback's hands and they didn't give it to their best back, their big back, Leonard Fournette. I thought if they lose this game, this is why. Sure enough, they will go on to lose the game. What do you got to say? Now that you see how your coach is, how he's yoked, you got to be happy because let me tell you what happened. Let me tell you what happened before this book came out. I believe it was before the book came out, but after, obviously, what was just said there by Doug Marrone and Doug Peterson. They played the Patriots in the Super Bowl, I believe, in 2018. The Patriots stormed back and took the lead in the fourth quarter. I believe it was 38-33 or 33-32. They stormed back and took the lead. With Nick Foles, the guy that you are all very familiar with, Philly scored, stopped, and scored again. Well, let me make a correction. They scored, stopped, and then got the ball and ran the clock out. They were in scoring range then, though. They did exactly what they had to do against the boogeyman. And he did it with a backup quarterback. So it's not like some guy's just blowing smoke. He's telling you, this is what I do. We're going to find a way. And anybody that can find a way to make Nick Foles look like Joe freaking Montana or Peyton Manning in the biggest game of the year against the greatest quarterback and the greatest head coach ever, sign me up. I'm good. And for the record, when all of this process started, my 3 candidates were Doug Peterson, Doug Caldwell, and Byron Leftwich. Those are the 3 guys that I wanted the most. And they got one. And now that they got him, I was really, really impressed with the press conference that he had the other day. Speaking of which, I was impressed with some colleagues too, because they asked some tough questions. I'm going to talk about the press conference briefly. Then I'm going to get into the fact that we always said that you can't draw free agents with certain people. I think that changes with Doug Peterson, and it also changes my list and the guys that I believe that this team can get in free agency. And I'll explain to you why that list changes here on Locked On Jaguars in just a second. Jaguar fans, this is Tony Wiggins with Locked On Jaguars with an incredible app everyone who buys gas needs to know about. It's called Get Upside. My listeners are earning cash back for every gallon of gas every time they fill up. Just download the free Get Upside app in the App Store or Google Play right now. Use the promo code TOUCHDOWN for 25 cents per gallon or more on your first fill up. Cash back. That's right. Don't pay full price at the pump anymore. Get cash back using Get Upside. Just download the app for free and use the promo code touchdown for 25 cents per gallon or more in your first tank. Some people who drive a lot are making as much as $200 or $300 in cash back. And that's no catch. The cash gets put back or added right back to your account, and you can cash out at any time to your bank account, PayPal, or e-gift card for Amazon and other brands. Just download the Get Upside app and use the promo code touchdown to get 25 cents per gallon or more cash back on your first tank. And we thank you for joining us here on Locked On Jaguars, as you do every single day, and making us your first listen, because it is your team every day. All right, man, we're going to keep on rolling here, and we're going to keep talking about what is going on in the National Football League with these Jacksonville Jaguars. The Jaguars named their new coach, and their new coach is, of course, Doud Pederson, someone you're all very familiar with from being the coach of the Philadelphia Eagles. Let's talk about the pressure real quick. Was proud of some tough questions that were asked that needed to be asked, because they have been talking points the entire process. Gene Fournette of the Jacksonville.com and the Times-Union came out swinging with the questions that everyone wants to know. There were some other people that asked some really, really good questions too. Of course, you expect it from certain people. However, if there was one thing I will tell you, is that if evading questions were running backs, Shad Khan would have been Barry Sanders. Shad was juking all over the place, man. Shad got to the point where it almost got to the point where I expected to somebody to say, what did you eat today? And he goes, unleaded. I put unleaded gas in my tank. It's like, I ain't asked you that. I asked you, what did you consume this morning? And I could have swore that Shad would have probably said, wow, that's a beautiful palm tree outside. It's like, when he was specifically asked about the process, he used certain words, and certain words are important. No one said that they wouldn't work with somebody, or did you offer somebody the job? And we were very detailed into the process, and we really did you ever offer somebody the job? Why did Trent stay? Well, Trent's under contract, and we didn't make a change or make an announcement that we're. Oh, of course, you didn't make an announcement if you didn't fire him. We know he's under contract. We asked you, why didn't you terminate? So it was just like, at some point I realized, bro, ain't gonna answer these questions, so let's just move on. And they said it was due diligence. I still to this day don't believe that. I think if you knew from the very beginning that Doud Pederson was your guy, and once you continue to go through the process, you could have stopped 4 or 5 guys in and just said, nope, we got our person. They took a risk. They took a risk that nobody else was going to snatch him up. And I really honestly think, and this is just me speculating, I think this is the job Doud Pederson wanted. I think this is the job that Doud Pederson wanted. And I think people in that industry, especially when you get these agents that, man, look, sometimes the agents are, it's one guy who's an agent for just about every coach. So if he knows a guy wants to go to a certain place, he could have a wink conversation with somebody and say, no, he ain't coming there. He wants to go. I recall a few years back, there was we were at a press conference when Doug Marrone and Dave Caldwell were retained. And I was talking to somebody who was a front office type, and I suggested that a certain coach was going to go somewhere, and he said, no, that guy is going to Cleveland. Stefanski's going to Cleveland. The other guy ain't going to Cleveland. They want Stefanski. And this is like in January. So my point to tell you guys is this. There's a lot of things that go on behind the scenes that you don't know and you don't hear. And a lot of times people aren't privy to hearing. Somebody told me that Kevin Stefanski was going to Cleveland a month before he went there. So don't trip on this process and think that, oh, they had him the whole time and he was never a danger that he could go somewhere else. If it wasn't a danger that Doug Peterson was going somewhere else, you can best believe that his agent and everybody else said, we want Jacksonville. And that's what he's focused on. Because Doug Peterson should have been a candidate for every single job that came open. And if he wasn't, it's because those people probably knew where he wanted to go. So just to give you a little insight into that. What could it mean for free agency? Because we talk so much about guys not wanting to be here, guys not wanting to play here. I don't think that's true with Doug Peterson. I think with Doug Peterson's presence and in the presence of another executive vice president, that would mean that Trent Baalke is probably, while he's still involved in the process and he's still the GM and he's still probably running the scouting department and he still has maybe 1/3 or whatever say in who comes and who goes. I think Trent's on a little bit of a rehab right now, and I think this process probably humbled him and let people know that, look, we can't have people out front. We can use you for your expertise and your experience, but there are some people that have to be more out front, and there's some people that have to be the folks that, especially the pro guys, have to engage with, and you have to do something to overcome whether it's fact, fiction, or perception or reality. It exists that Trent Baalke is a problem. So you have to overcome that. Doug Peterson is a coach's coach. He played that position. He won the Super Bowl. He did it publicly with a galvanized team playing Dreams and Nightmares by Meek Mill, and just in that city in Philadelphia. You can do that there. You can do it anywhere. Okay. And I think that's a big, big deal. I think you now see guys that you may not see here philosophically come here. Like, I'll give you an example. Under Urban Meyer, there was just this emphasis for guys that could run. I thought an overemphasis placed on speed, and without considering everything else. Now a guy like Mike Williams comes into play. And he comes into play because he can win. He comes into play because he has size. He comes into play because when I think about Mike Williams, I automatically think about Alshon Jeffrey, who played for Doug Peterson. I draw a parallel. Now, I believe that the offensive line will definitely be a bigger priority than some people thinks that it needs to be. And I'm not even talking about Evan Neal. I'm talking about when we get to free agency, they're gonna have to find people on the interior that can really, really move folks. And you got to get to the point with these offensive linemen where you're not hoping and wishing. And I always say familiarity can be the devil when it's not good. And there's too many times that just because we know the name of the top 9 guys on the depth chart, that we actually think that familiarity means that they're good. No, that familiarity just means you pay attention. It doesn't mean that they're really, really good. So now I'm thinking guys like Laken Tomlinson. I'm thinking guys like that on the interior. I'm thinking versatile, big, physical offensive linemen, and they're not going to spare any expense on that. Now I can see tight ends coming here, and I know everybody digs Arnold and all of that. I can just see a tight end, maybe like Schwartz in Dallas, who is a pure pass catcher, or guys like that. They're going to use the tight end. They're going to use 2 and 3 running backs. Go back and do yourself a favor and watch the Super Bowl against New England. And you see how they use Clement, and you see how they use LeGarrette Blount, and you see how they mixed and matched the people that they threw it with. And then watch the interaction of Doug Marrone and Doug Peterson and Nick Foles. And just watch how that communication works and how the quarterback can be an extension of the head coach on the field. And I can just imagine Trevor Lawrence. I am super, super excited about the prospect of Trevor Lawrence and Doug Peterson doing this thing together. I'm going to talk about a little bit about the draft, how all of this affects the NFL draft as well, because it does. The approach of the NFL draft, who says who's going to have the last say, who's going to have the power. And then the last thing is how quickly this thing switched up the fan base to the point where everybody got on board. And I knew that could happen if they did the right thing, and eventually they did. One of 2 things that could have been correct. And also go over a little bit of the staff that I think Doug Peterson might go after. And we'll do that in just a second here on Locked On Jaguars. After I tell you about BetOnline. BetOnline would like to wish you a happy new betting year as we continue our march to the playoffs and beyond. BetOnline remains the number 1 spot for all the best sports wagering action for 2022. new year and a new updated and mobile website to sign up today and receive your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. Just use the promo code Locked On to get started. From football, basketball, hockey, boxing, UFC, right down to your favorite Vegas casino games. Don't wait to take advantage of the amazing offers available for 2022. BetOnline is the fastest and easiest way to wager on all of your favorite sports. BetOnline, where the game starts. And you start here every day with us on Locked On Jaguars and making us your first listen. You can make your second listen, the Locked On Bets podcast with your boy Q and Lee Sterling, and you can get that wherever you get your podcast. And it's free on all platforms. Make sure you check them out because you're going to need the information and the little baby tidbits that could be the difference between you winning and losing. So make sure you pay attention to your boy Q, who's also my boy Q, and analyst Lee Sterling on the Locked On Bets podcast. All right, the draft. What does it mean now that you know who the coach is going to be? I don't think overall things are going to change very much. I do think, though, the emphasis on athletic profile, while that's always important, and I think it's really, really important to everybody, I do think it sometimes got a little overemphasized with the last administration and the connectivity that the players who were drafted, the connectivity to the people who had their eyes mostly on the college game. I think that got overplayed too. I think now what you're going to do is you're going to have guys who know these scouts and know these coaches, and they're going to really, really look for fit. And they're going to look for fit in terms of the things that they can do, the versatility these players can provide. And they won't be a monolithic type team, whereas in the past you sort of felt like they were trying to build a team a certain way based on some of the things and principles that you use in college. The NFL is not college, it's totally different. And I'm glad we now have a coach that realizes that. I think you have a coach now that's going to just look at the player as an individual and not see if he fits into the puzzle, but you're going to look at him and say, what does he bring to the table that I can actually put in my cabinet, my spice cabinet, and every now and then take it and sprinkle it. What does he do well? That's what you're going to get. Not, is he this? No, what is he? That's two different. You can have an approach to say, is he this? Or you can go in and go, let me see what's in here. What is that? How can I use that? And I think that's what you're going to get with a creative mind like Doud Pederson. They're going to probably focus more on a guy's mental and his makeup and the way that he goes about and approaches the game. But I don't think they're going to eliminate guys based on them not having certain characteristics. I think they're going to look at guys to see what guys can actually do for them. And it's going to make this team versatile. It's going to make this team a little bit more multiple. And it's going to make this team a little bit more difficult to defend for other people. So what do I think they do in free agency? Obviously, it depends what they do in the draft. I think now you may get them to look at a little bit of a solid, nice deal to keep DJ Chark, especially if they're going to go after a guy like Alshon Jeffrey. And then you might see him come back in the draft, maybe in the second or third round, and address the slot receiver position. Or if they're sitting there in the second round and one of those guys or those group of receivers start to fall, me personally, I would do backflips if they re-sign DJ Chark to a little bit of a prove-it deal, but give him a little something to keep him happy. Go out and sign Mike Williams and make him your alpha, and then come back in the draft. And when you're sitting there in the second round and these receivers, this group of receivers start to come down a little bit, I go and get Chris Olave. And I'm telling you, you need the different body types. You need the different skill sets to make this thing work. And Olave would be a perfect slot receiver, a guy who can get off that line. He has a sort of a CeeDee Lamb build to him. But, man, great footwork, hands catcher, super, super quick and fast. I think he's a guy that if you get the big physical receiver and then you get the other big flanker, the guy who can run and do a lot of different stuff in the route tree, having a guy like Olave that can take that little quick out or that can find the little seams in the zone to be able to sit down for a quarterback like Trevor to find him, I think that would be fabulous. I also wouldn't mind if they move back in the draft. I want them to take Evan Neal, but if they don't take Evan Neal, move down a little bit in the draft, And there's some other guys, man, that you can really, really address the offensive line with. If you're getting 2-for-1s, Trevor Penning. Trevor Penning is a good-looking player. I saw at the Senior Bowl, can play left and right tackle. He's a behemoth of a man. He's 6'7", 330 pounds. And one thing about those Philly teams, they really, really always had a lot of versatility and a lot of strength and knew how to play on the offensive line. So I don't want to take too much of the Philly stuff and put it on Doud Pederson. But what I will say is they had a nice mix of being able to go vertical, of being able to go horizontal, and then those running lanes were created. LeGarrette Blount, those guys sometimes were running through holes that you could have taken a school bus through. So it's just going to be fun to see a competent team. In terms of his staff, I heard that there are overtures towards Pep Hamilton. You guys know how I feel about Pep Hamilton to be the OC, and more than likely, Doug says he's going to call plays. But Pep Hamilton is a guy who could really, really stick by Trevor as a quarterback coach and be the pass game coordinator. And Doug Pederson also said that there's sometimes when things get stale in the game, and I'm paraphrasing, it gets stale and you don't see it, you give it to another guy and he can do it. And I think that's what he did with Frank Reich. I also think that's what he would do with a guy like Pep Hamilton. But Pep is just a great coach. Pep is a great coach, and if he does well here, we won't have him long, but it will still be good to have that guy in the building. So most of you guys got your wish. What you got was you got an offensive coach who's going to have his fingerprint and his imprint on the offense, and he's going to bring guys in to do the same thing. I'm telling you what, they're going to have a good – Doug Peterson is well-liked. They're going to have a good offensive line coach. They're going to have a good wide receivers coach. They're going to have a good running backs coach. They're going to get a big-time defensive coordinator too. I've heard rumors of Caldwell. I've heard rumors of Vic Fangio. I mean, you start getting into names like that. Those are guys that have been around for an awful long time and really, really understand what it's like. The thing is on defense, the way they're set up to run either a 4-3 or a 3-4. And front and alignment, I talked to Todd Wash, a week ago, maybe 4 or 5 days ago in Mobile. And people make so much out of front and alignment. It's really more about personnel because there are a number of teams around the league that didn't like the 4-3. And then you look up and three of the 4-4 teams in the playoffs that were left remaining all were 4-3 teams. So if you run your defense correctly, your alignment doesn't really matter. And what coaching tree you come from doesn't matter as long as you're able to make adjustments and get the right personnel in the game at the right time. So we got a lot to look forward to with the rest of the week. I'm going to reach out to my guys at Locked On Eagles and try to see if we can get some more insight on the nuances and the things that Doug Pederson does well. But keep your eyes open, man. There's a lot of stuff going on, a lot of moving and shaking in the NFL, a lot of things going on in terms of who the staff is going to be and whether or not they're going to name Rick Spielman or whoever else as executive vice president. But things are looking up. Finally, some good news and some good things to talk about with the Jaguar fans here on Locked On Jaguars. And we do it here every day because it's your team every day. Until tomorrow, you guys keep taking care of each other, man. And let's just say I think things are looking up for you guys. And it'll be a while until we have another negative podcast, hopefully. It's your man, Tony Wiggins, here with Locked On Jaguars.